Have you ever heard about a story that was so crazy it must not be true? Then find out it's 100% true and it happened on this earth during your lifetime and you didn't
Really?
know anything about it. Those are some of the true crime stories we're going to discuss on the Welcome Distraction with the Kemp Brothers today.
This is the Welcome Distraction Podcast with the Kemp Brothers. Their immature stories, thoughts, and opinions are their own and should be taken with the same level of seriousness as a drunk uncle's late-night conspiracy theory. They are not responsible for any brain cells lost, friendships ruined, or questionable life choices made under their influence. Now buckle up, buttercups.
I'm your host, Chris, for this episode of the Welcome Distraction True Crime Stories Edition. Today, we're going to discuss a few of the true crime stories that stand out to us. It's the craziest stuff that you can't believe humans are capable of, but sadly, they are. First story up is going to be the Tylenol Murders. Have you guys ever heard of this?
I have heard about it.
So this is a Netflix documentary. It's been publicized lately. When it first came out, I did not know what the heck it was about. Tylenol murders? You got to be kidding me. So I'll set the stage. It was 1982 in Chicago when I believe the first victim, somebody called 911. The fire department showed up and the person was having a seizure and foaming at the mouth. Ended up just stopped breathing. They couldn't resuscitate him and died. They couldn't understand why it happened, but they assumed, hey, it's a natural death. Sorry about that. And they moved on. It was unfortunate. However, some other things started happening around Chicago. But remember, this was in 1982, and it wasn't like the internet. Didn't have phones that you just had in your pocket and things of that nature. So other people started to get sick. However, what stands out to me the most in this story was the first victim. It was a couple days had gone by and they were all stunned. The family, I guess it was a close family. They had all gathered at the first victim's house. At this time, they had no idea why this person just dropped dead out of nowhere. So they mourned the person. They went to the funeral, and I believe they were at the house, and they had been, crying and weeping. And two other family members had headaches. So they did what anybody did back then was they reached
Take
for the
drug.
Tylenol. Yeah. And so as the story's being told, you're like, "Oh my gosh, no, what are they doing?" But nobody knew. Tylenol. So
You wouldn't
they
suspect Tylenol. You wouldn't
right.
suspect anything like that.
And
It's
so
headache medicine.
the same fire department that got called to the scene for the first victim was now coming back to the same house, and they had believe husband and wife now having the exact same symptoms of like couldn't breathe, head hurt, foaming at the mouth, and then they both died as well. So it turned out 1982, Chicago, somebody had bought perfectly good Tylenol off the shelf, taken it home because it was very easy to manipulate the Tylenol bottles, put cyanide poisoning in the capsules, filled them back up, and then randomly distributed them on the shelves in Chicago
That's
to
so
be resold.
diabolical.
I mean, can you imagine? You just have a headache. You just want to take some Tylenol or whatever the pain may be.
Just want to feel better.
Right. And
Crazy.
then with cyanide, now I don't know from experience, but it happens pretty damn quick to where you're just fine 1 second, next couple minutes, you're dead. That happened
Hmm.
really quick. And so the story goes, I believe 12 people ended up
Well,
dying. Yeah, 12 people ended up dying
wow.
from this. And there could have been more because, you still had people of all ages taking Tylenol.
Hmm.
So they weren't exactly sure what the total may have been. They did know that it happened pretty quickly.
And information's not flowing like today's world. So they don't know. People are dying. I don't know if it's related. It's not getting out there.
Right. So that's a good point. The way they were trying to get the word out there was by loudspeaker on vans being driven through the streets of Chicago. Can you imagine that's just creating even more, panic and
Yeah.
almost rioting of wanting to know what's going on until they actually realize it's the Tylenol. Somebody doesn't like the Tylenol. But it cost Johnson and Johnson was the maker of Tylenol. And at the time, this was their big money maker. Overall, it cost them over $100 million.
I mean,
1982 money, but it did forever change the way medications are bottled. Now they have to have a tamper-proof lid on top of it. They weren't always, I can't open them, or
mhm.
kid-proof. They were just regular tops. You just popped them off. Another interesting part about it, they did come up with a suspect who was found guilty of trying to extort money from Johnson and Johnson. He wrote a letter saying it was him, and they ended up finding out who it was. He was just trying to make money off
Mhm.
of extorting them, and it actually wasn't him. However, if you go back and listen to this documentary, this same individual was in charge of an elderly man or a neighbor at one point, and that man went missing, and they found him, I believe, in the attic
Oh,
from
yeah.
like blood or ooze coming through the
Mhm.
ceiling, and never able to charge him with that murder as well. So this individual, he had the extortion letter from Tylenol. He said he did it, but he didn't do it. Looked like he was capable of murder, but they could never charge him. And so he never was convicted of any of those things. Sadly, the answers may have died with him, I believe, right after the documentary came out, not long after that. It said it was one of his last interviews on camera because he died after that. A lot of families were affected, mothers, daughters, brothers, husbands, fathers. Never got real answers about what happened. So that's
I
one
saw
thing.
that.
It's
Yeah, I
crazy.
saw there was also like conspiracy theories, and I think one of the daughters is still kind of, even to this day, still trying to lead a crusade to find out. She thinks that the answers point back to Tylenol in the manufacturing process, and that somebody in the manufacturing
On the factory, yeah. Assembly
area
line, maybe?
put the cyanide in there because the way it went out, it went to one area in Chicago, but she thinks that there was not enough done within Tylenol, and Tylenol itself was trying to deflect. And even though they didn't find out who did it, it
Right.
was still not showing that Tylenol did it, and they did their damnedest to point the finger away from them, even though there were some, signs that they probably should have looked into it more. But by the time they got deeper into it, it was just
Right.
kind of like, well, it's too little, too late, and
Mhm.
we're not going to be able to let you in
Yeah.
here. And
And I'm
find
sure
out.
we'll never know the extent of what they changed. I'm sure the factory process and how they processed or created Tylenol changed, and we never knew. They probably could have easily said, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of times that could have happened
Mhm.
by
They
Joe
did find,
Blow
I
on
think,
them."
cyanide there on the grounds and everything. But could you imagine if Tylenol was found responsible for this stuff?
That'd
It
be
wouldn't have just been
crazy.
$100 million, which they would gladly spend when the other option is going bankrupt. Nobody would trust
Yeah.
that again because of that. So,
It's crazy. It was 1982, and they make so many products, right? So I
mhm.
think other ones want shampoo, things of that nature. But you think about it, 1982, Tylenol murders. Just talking about it or just watching that doesn't exactly make you want to go taking that next Tylenol.
I'll
Like,
just deal with my
mm,
headache. It's fine.
yeah,
It's just scary. We were alive during that time. What
yeah,
if we'd
that's
been
another
in that
thing.
location and our parents went and bought Tylenol?
Yeah, no, here you go. Change forever. So, Nicholas, what do you got? What?
So I got American Nightmare. And so I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with this one. So this one takes place back in 2015 and set the stage. Boyfriend and girlfriend, Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn. They're staying at his house. It's late one night. Somebody breaks in, holds them at gunpoint, gets zip ties, has them zip tie each other together, has blacked out goggles and like puts them over their eyes so they can't see what's going on, who all's there, anything. So they wind up kidnapping the girl, throw her in a trunk, and they give the guy like this drugs and have him sleep. It's like a sleep aid, I guess. And so he winds up sleeping for like 12 hours. He wakes up and he's got instructions on a voicemail that say that we're holding your girlfriend ransom. $8,500 is the ransom
That's the
amount,
ransom.
which is
$500.
crazy amount, like $8,500. Like what?
They're
And
like,
so
keep her.
he
I got them overdue parking tickets.
so
My
by the
car got
time he
towed.
comes to, he calls the cops. All this time's gone by, and of course, their first reaction is like, "Why are you just now calling?" And he tries to explain to them the situation. They take him down to the police station. This is happening out in Vallejo, California, and right away, based off the story that he's giving, they're like, "This is bullshit." They don't believe a word he's saying. They're treating him more like he's a suspect because he's the
Mhm.
last one to see her. So, to an extent, you kind of
You
understand
got
that.
to
Like,
check
okay,
him out. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Cross him off.
they're trying to figure out what's going on. The story to them is just not really making sense. And so 48 hours goes by and all of a sudden she shows up in Huntington Beach, California.
What's
And they're like, what the hell?
Twisty twist.
And so a lot of people who are seeing the news are like, this seems like a familiar story. So if you're familiar with the movie called Gone Girl,
Yeah.
everybody, including the police department, was like, this is a
I've seen this
hoax.
movie.
This is too much like the movie. They inappropriately go out to the media and declare it a hoax
Mm.
and embarrass these two
That's right. I
and
remember
make them
this.
into the suspect and instead of the victims that they really were, and really turn them almost into the criminals. And
Instead
it
of
more or less
trying
like
to find the people.
Yeah, so they're trying to like manage their own lives and trying to save, their reputation and trying to move on. Meanwhile, they know that this perpetrator is somewhere out there. They're not getting any assistance from the police department. So fast forward like 6 months, a sergeant from another police department thankfully was following that story and saw some similar in this one case that she was working where
As it
these
was
people
unfolding,
called
right?
and reported like things that the perpetrator did,
Mhm.
and luckily the guy accidentally left a cell phone behind, and so
Whoops.
they were able to track him down. And so fast forward to when they found him, it winds up being this guy who's a former Marine. He's a law student and graduated from Harvard,
Oh,
and everything that they said reported was true. 100%. So he came in, he kidnapped her, raped her, he videoed it, and then released her. And so
that's crazy.
so he
What
winds
tunnel
up pleading guilty. He winds up getting over 40 years for kidnap, for rape, for ransom, and the boyfriend and girlfriend wind up suing the Vallejo Police Department for
Oh,
$2.5
yeah.
million dollars.
Serves him right.
Yep. And they actually went on to get married and had a couple girls.
Oh, look at
So
that.
yeah.
What a happy ending. They got a little money for it.
So yeah, just crazy. Like they have no idea like why the guy did it. There was rumors that the guy was actually after the Aaron Quinn's previous girlfriend, and they had recently broke up. So she was the original target, and he had been surveillancing them through drones, watching them, looking
Holy
for
shit.
their habits and when they come and go. And he used different computer programs to make it seem like there were multiple people when he went in there, and it originally kidnapped them. He used a fake like water gun for the gun. He painted it to look like a real gun. What else?
What a crazy SOB.
It's
Wow.
like so many inappropriate actions that took place throughout the whole case.
Mm.
So it's like a 3-piece episode. It's a really good watch. But as you're watching it, you're like, what the heck is going on
It's
here? It's
just
crazy.
crazy. You could think
Yeah.
like in the 80s, maybe even the 90s. I know there was technology involved in the case, but you would think in this day and age, because this was only 2015, that
Right.
they do their due diligence to run these things down and somehow disprove these things. But they're like, nah, so quick to come
Yeah.
to
Tunnel
judgment to
vision.
say, nah, this is a hoax. You guys are a bunch of liars. This is too similar. I mean, now to come to realize that the Gone Girl thing was probably part of this other guy's thinking of how I'm going to
Right.
handle this situation.
Yep.
Man, that's messed
That's
up.
crazy. That's a good one, though. Now, Brett, you have a story that truly is not really well known.
All right. So the first one of my stories, the bite-sized true crime version here, this takes place in the early 60s. This is 1961. Let me paint the picture for you. And this true crime was known as the Beatnik Killers, aka the Clown Fugitive. So we'll get to the Clown Fugitive part. Let me break this down for you, though. So in 1961, this two females, Caroline Lima and Leslie Perez, then known as Leslie Douglas Ashley, arrived at the Houston office realtor of Fred Tones for a prearranged sexual encounter.
No.
Well, things quickly escalated, and instead of that happening, they ended up shooting him 6 times and murdering him, and then burned his body.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. So they then drove his Lincoln and went on a 3-week rampage of just gallivanting across parts of the country. They went to Galveston and then over to New Orleans, and then eventually were found in New York City by the authorities. They were extradited back to Houston, and just within a couple months, they were facing charges of capital murder. So they claimed it was in self-defense and that he turned on them, and they had no choice but to put 6 bullets in this guy. So it went to a trial, and they were eventually found guilty, both of them. It was a concurrent trial with both of them together. They were found guilty, both sentenced to death. Had this gone through, Lima would have been the first woman legally executed in Texas in nearly a century.
Buying.
But that didn't happen. The federal judge at the time granted a stay of execution for both of them just 4 hours before they were scheduled to die.
Dang.
So it
Hail
was
Mary.
that close They were about to be executed. So it's
Mhm.
kind of what every death row inmate was hoping for. They got a stay of execution just hours before. They looked into it, and upon further appeal, they ruled that the prosecution had suppressed some evidence that had affected the pair on their trial, and they were both granted new trials. And
Damn.
during this new trial, though, Lima was sentenced to 5 years in prison, while Perez was declared insane and sentenced to a mental hospital
5 years
in
and
San Antonio.
insane.
Yeah, so what a turn of
Wow,
events, right? So now instead of getting the death penalty, one
that's
gets 5
ridiculous.
years and the other one goes to a mental hospital. So this is where the story takes another twist, then escapes the mental hospital and gets a new lease on life and is found in Atlanta 6 months later, where she was working as a clown with a traveling carnival. So this is where she was known as the clown fugitive. And she was then extradited back to Texas. And then at this time, they decided, well, we're going to go ahead and try you for that murder that we said you were insane before. I don't know how that works. But so she was tried for Tone's murder and then sentenced to 15 years, only serving 5. And then she came out 10 years after her release as transgender. So, I mean, just throw another twist in there. And then she devoted herself to a political activism and founded a chapter of ACT-UP in 1988, and then ended up making a political run for 3 unsuccessful runs at a Democratic Party chair in Harris County, and eventually died in 2005. Well,
Dang.
what a crazy turn of events, that these 2 females were convicted of a murder, subsequently were given a stay of execution only to have a retrial and get very, so I guess this evidence must have been pretty important to go ahead and reduce it all the way to just, effectively just a few years.
Yeah, you talk about a up and down roller coaster from one end of the spectrum to the other. Hours before death to escaping to living and working as a clown
Yeah, being a clown.
to
Yep.
trying to run for as a Democrat in a official political party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
So
So
this,
5 years for murder and then gallivanting around town in his car, like openly like admitting to the fact that they did it, and they got 5 years. And
Being called
yep,
insane
hey,
and not
self-defense. So it was a prearranged sexual encounter that they all agreed upon, supposedly. I mean, but the one guy that can't talk to it's dead,
right.
So somehow they claimed it was self-defense, and that those second trials must have definitely had different effect, because it was not nearly as severe. And then to actually have whole lives, from death a few hours away to clown. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, the second story I have for you, maybe a little more well known, maybe not, especially here in the US. This one is Fred and Rose West, a British horror story. If you follow it on Netflix, a documentary that was released last year. Again, done really well for what it is. We're talking about crazy shit that people have done. So this one is a couple living in, I believe it's Gloucester, England. The alleged crimes, we'll say alleged for now, happened between 1967 and 1987. So this couple, they lived what seemed to be an unassuming life in a small house, small backyard, small patio area. And then their younger daughter, I believe, went missing. And the police got involved to do an inquiry about where the missing daughter was. So they talked to Mr. Fred West. They started interrogating him, finding out what's going on. Now, this is in 1994. Hey, she's been missing for a little while. What's going on? She'd been missing for quite a few years. I believe it was 1986 was the last time she'd been seen. And so they began questioning him, and he started to slowly break down. The story wasn't adding up. So they started hammering a little bit more about what's going on and other people that had been coming and going out of their house. Eventually, he did break down and said, statements that other kids gave that when he would get mad and yell at them, he would tell them, you better behave or you're going to end up under the patio like your sister.
Ooh.
Right. Yeah. And so, but it was all like, oh, I just said that in anger, and just they're not listening and things of that nature. So eventually, Fred West did come out and say, I did have something to do with her disappearance. It was just me, though. Rose knew nothing about it. And they took him into custody, and they said, well, we're going to start looking in your yard. Is she buried in the yard? And he would go so far, but not tell them everything. And then they started digging up the patio. They couldn't find anything. At one point in the documentary, they're showing real footage of them taking the prisoner out, because they do believe he has done something, and the body may be buried somewhere on the premises at the residence. They're walking him around trying to find out where
did he bury her? And he's like, if I did, it'd be right about here. He's talking like in the center. And then there's a young female who is like his confidant, who she was assigned to take care of him, almost like a public defender, but his handler is what she was. And he would start confiding in her. And as they're walking around the patio, he starts winking at her, and she's talking in real interviews saying, he's like, why were you winking at me? He goes, you didn't see that? The bone was sticking up right there, you know? And so they show some footage or whatnot, and they go back, and she's like, well, you have to tell them. She was supposed to have, I guess, confidentiality between what they were saying. She's like, you have to tell them. He eventually did say, this is where she's buried. So as they dug, they would find other bones. They're like, this is the body, but it is not the one we were looking for. And so they end up tearing up the entire patio, finding quite a few bodies over at 25 Cromwell Street is what it was. And so then they get a little bit more into the wife, their relationship. He met his wife Rose when she was 15. She was actually probably one of his very first victims, but he ended up training her and becoming a
groomed her, huh?
participant. Yeah, groomed her, and then they started going and finding other people and grooming them, bringing them, and then eventually capturing them, bringing them back to the house, and they would disappear. So this went on for like late 60s into the mid to late 80s. Eventually, one of the quotes, Fred West, when he got somebody to finally talk to, they said, "Is there more bodies?" And he hesitated, and he's like, there's a shitload more. And
Jesus.
so they end up tearing up the basement, the flooring in the house, the entire patio. I think they were able to say there was something of the nature of 20 some bodies recovered, or
God.
parts of them, from people that had come through there. One of them being another female who was pregnant with his baby that he killed as well. So he ended up in 1995 committing suicide while waiting a trial.
Yeah,
They did charge the wife because who knew about and participated, and later they secretly taped her at her house, confessing and then eventually breaking down, but never saying she did it, but under the control of him. She was convicted of 10 murders and sentenced to 40, I think, a life sentence, which was 40 years times 10. She still claims she's innocent today, but that was one of the craziest stories in the UK that I know of, where over a better part of 2 decades, they completely kept filling spaces in their home and burying bodies. Can you imagine being the neighbors of those folks? But that's some crazy
Wayne
stuff
Gacy
again.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. You see these documentaries and you're like, this happened? Part of this happened while I was alive and I didn't know about it? That's crazy. Nicholas, what do you got?
Well, I guess kind of in the same vein of yours. There's some family stuff going on. Mine's American Murder, The Neighbors Next Door, because this one revolves around the family next door. This one is gut wrenching for me to watch and even read about. It's about a father or a husband, wife, and their 2 little girls. So to set the stage, 2014, a woman named Shannon got a friend request on Facebook from a guy named Chris Watts, and her initial reaction was like, "Who's this guy?" But lo and behold, 8 months later, they got together, wound up hitting it off, formed a relationship, wound up getting married. Fast forward to 2018, they've got 2 little girls, Bella or Celeste, 3. But their marriage winds up having some issues. They wind up kind of heading down a rocky road. She notices that he's becoming more distant. Turns out he had entered into an extramarital affair with a woman that he
Somebody's got a
at-
girlfriend.
It's the girl that he met at work, where he works at an oil company. And so they started carrying on this relationship that they don't necessarily know if it was the motive, but he's carrying on this relationship unbeknownst to her. They wind up finding out that she's pregnant, another one on the way. It's going to be a boy. She's hoping, and she's texting. And in this documentary, you can see where they've got all the records for the text messages that she's sending to friends, that she's concerned about their marriage, whatever, but she's hoping that maybe this will bring him back around. Fast forward to August 13th, 2018, Chris Watt and his wife get into a huge argument. He winds up strangling her,
Man.
and then wrapping her body up in plastic. 2 little girls come in and see him doing this. He winds up loading her body into the truck and takes the 2 little girls with him. The story that he originally, so So once they go missing, one of her friends knew that she had a doctor's appointment she was supposed to go to. She was trying to get a hold of her. She knew that she was looking forward to the doctor's appointment. She was going to hear from her. She never heard from her. So she's the one that winds up calling the police to initiate an investigation. Cops show up. He plays the, being husband, the grieving father. Like, I don't know where they're at. She left this morning. She took the kids. I don't know where they're at. They wind up going next door to the neighbor. The neighbor's like, yeah, I got a camera. They look at the camera. It's clear that he was up to something that morning.
Like really early.
And it's clear that you never see her leave. And there's a part where Chris Watt, the suspect, the husband, walks off, and you can hear the neighbor talking to the cop, like, you need to look into this. There's something ain't right. Something ain't right about him.
Yeah.
And so they wind up giving him a lie detector test. He fails it miserably. He first tried to say that he walked in on his wife smothering the children after she got done, and then he wound up killing her.
Liar.
Fast forward to they get his father, the husband, Chris Watt's father, comes into the question room down at the police station. He winds up admitting to his father that he killed not only his wife, but his 2 little girls. And then he goes into detail that after he loaded the body up into the truck with the kids, he drove to his work, the oil field, and he turned around in the truck and he killed his youngest daughter, Celeste, who was 3. And then, this is his quotes, his older daughter, Bella, said, "Daddy, are you gonna do to me what you just did to Celeste?" And then he said that she put up a fight, and he wound up suffocating her. He wound up placing them in oil tanks at his work, and then buried his wife in a shallow grave. So you rewind to back when the cops came, and he's trying to play this innocent, victim whose wife has left him, taken his kids. And he knows all this that he's done. He's trying to hide it. And they wound up finding, the communications with the other woman that he's having an affair with. She knew nothing about this. She was under the impression that him and his wife were in the process of getting divorced when they met, and that the divorce has gone through. They went through her internet searches. They found that she was actually looking for like a wedding dress. She was like planning on starting a whole new life with this guy.
Ridiculous.
So crazy that
criminals are so
what are you thinking? Like, you're gonna make them disappear and you're gonna start a whole new life with somebody else. Like, they were never able to identify like what the motive was. He claimed that he just got pushed to his limit by her, that he was just insane, and that he doesn't not that he doesn't necessarily remember it, but he took things way too far, and
blacked out.
He winds up getting sentenced to let's see. He was sentenced to 5 life terms without possibility of parole, 3 of them consecutive, plus additional years for the pregnancy and tampering charges, and is serving his sentence in a maximum security prison.
Just be killed on the spot.
Yep,
Done.
dead. They should suffocate him.
There's no debate on this. You did it. Dead. Stop breathing our oxygen and letting us pay for your meals.
All right, Brett, you got the last one to bring us home.
All right, so I'm going to throw it way back to the 60s again in this story that I came across years ago that brought to light again because it's a pretty interesting story. This is a story of about an 11-year-old girl named Terry Jo Duperrault. She was found drifting alone in 1961 on a small lifeboat outside of the Bahamas after surviving nearly 4 days in the open ocean without food or water. She was just in this small little lifeboat with absolutely nothing. 11 years old, blonde-haired little girl. And a passing freighter spotted her, and they brought her to. But that was only the beginning of the story. So just days earlier, she had been on a family vacation on a chartered yacht with her well-to-do father and the rest of her family. An optometrist, Dr. Arthur Duperrault, he chartered a luxury yacht, the Bluebell, from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to the Bahamas for a family trip. And he brought along with him his wife and his 3 kids, Brian, 14, Terry Jo, 11, and Renee, 7, along with his wife, Jean. And so they went on this trip, but he also got his old buddy to come with him, who was a World War II veteran that he knew, and his name was Harvey, I believe. And Harvey, he was a World War II veteran, and he got him to skipper this yacht. So, hey, the band's back together, got the family, and this guy Harvey, who he knew and trusted, brought his wife and they went off sailing, and they were 4 nights, 5 nights into the trip. And then on the fifth night, I think it was early morning, everything went fine. So early morning, Terry Jo wakes up and she goes up from the bottom of the deck and comes up. And when she comes up, she sees this horrific sight, like her mother and her brother just covered in blood on the deck. And she sees the captain, Harvey, and asks, "What happened? Are they okay?" And he just smacks her across the face and tells her to go back down under the deck. And so she does it. She goes down there, but water is starting to come into the boat, and she's starting. She's 11. She's not 3 years old, 5 years old. She is old enough to know something bad is happening, and she goes back up and she questions Harvey and asks him, "Is the boat sinking?" And he says yes. And then he asks her, "Hey, did you see the dinghy that was off the back of the boat?" And she says, "Yes, it was back there." So he goes back to the dinghy and he climbs in it, and he just leaves as this boat is going down. This yacht is sinking. So he has taken off in this dinghy, and you fast forward to when Terry Jo is now rescued. These passing by boats way out see this small speck far out in the water, and they say it's too big to be just floating trash and it's too small to be a boat. So they set their sights on this boat and they go out there to the speck. And when they get there, they can't believe it. And they see this 11-year-old tow-headed girl just floating on this small raft. So
Wow.
Terry Jo, as the boat was going down, she remembered that there was a small little lifeboat raft, not a dinghy. It was just barely big enough for her. As they pulled up, they took this iconic picture of her just sitting there. And it was on the cover of Life magazine that this American girl was found in the open ocean, and she had survived out there 84 hours with nothing in
It's
this heat,
crazy.
all by herself, no cover or anything. And fast forward, they found out at the same time that Harvey, the captain, he was rescued by a different passing freighter, and he got word, he had heard that Terry Jo was saved, and the Coast Guard or the people that found him were telling him that this girl Terry Jo from the same wreckage you were on was found. And he said, "This is wonderful news." Well, he killed himself the next day in the motel because he knew what she knew, and it was about to come out. So for whatever reason, he left her
Coward.
alive, expecting her to die on that boat, and didn't stab her like the rest of the family. He killed all of them. But they suspect that the motive was because his wife, who accompanied him, killed her or drowned her. And then he took her body with in that dinghy and brought her along. That way he could say, "Look, this is my wife. She drowned. She didn't make it. And I have her, I have her body." And that he could collect double indemnity $20,000 life insurance. I mean, this is in the 60s, so that's a lot of money.
Wow.
So he did that, and he killed the whole family. So his motive was money. But as soon as he found out that Terry Jo had survived, he knew his story was going to unravel, and that she was going to tell the truth. So he offed himself. So there was a lot of unanswered questions, but he sure didn't expect this 11-year-old girl to make it. And yeah, that picture was on the cover of Life magazine, and she was super famous. And it went on to be a big story, but it faded away over the years. So a lot of people don't know about it. So when you hear about it, you're like, "Holy shit, that backfired."
Well, man, we have talked about some really sick stuff people are capable of doing. And just when you think you've heard it all, seen it all in this digital age, something else comes out that you don't know happened, may have just happened, may have happened in the 60s. But now usually nothing happens without some type of proof of video, pictures, or something of that nature. Man, it's crazy the things that human beings are capable of. It's not all crazy bad. Sometimes there's some good stuff that gets caught on camera and things like that. But not on this edition of the Welcome Distraction Podcast. It's been all about true crimes. But before we go, we're going to ask a couple of questions between the Kemp brothers. So if I didn't do it, us three were being interrogated about something we didn't do, allegedly, who would crack first? Yeah, I think I would too. Yeah, I think I would too. All right. So if us three are being alleged murderers, who did it between the three of us? Brett?
No, self-defense.
See, he's ready. He's already ready. He's already got his case.
Nope.
Yeah.
I was protecting my family. I'd be that father. I think it was 1984, the one on the phone booth and that footage
Oh, yeah.
where this guy is being
Mhm.
brought back, and it's open secret that this dude, they know he sexually assaulted his son that was supposed to be in his care on a trip. Some, like, I don't know, they were in Taekwondo or some shit. and they're bringing this guy back through the airport, and the father is just behind him on the
He
phone
comes
booth, acting
out.
like he's on the phone. And as soon as they walk him by, that he's got in handcuffs, the cops walk by, he just pulls out it looks like a 38, and just blasts him, kills him right
Boom.
there. And he got barely anything. I think he
Yeah.
got a slap on the wrist, and he was gone. Justifiable homicide.
That's
Because
right. The ultimate father's revenge, protecting their kids.
Yep.
Pretty sure that
That'd be that
pops
guy.
up every year. Happy Father's Day.
Best father in the world. Fuck around and
That's
find
right.
out. Champion Father's Day edition.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the Welcome Distraction podcast today. It's been fun. It's been crazy, literally. But thanks for stopping by. If you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit that little button right there. That way you get the next notification when the new stuff comes out. So I'm your host today, Chris.
I'm the innocent middle child, Brett.
I'm the most handsome one, Nick.
All right, y'all. Take care.